So good afternoon to everyone who is watching and tuning in to the Herald Book Club series partnered by Bargain Books. What do we have here in front of us? We have two former PE Nelson Mandela Bay boys. We have two former Grey boys who are now known as Old Grey boys. They are currently Cape Town boys, and both of them are proudly South African. And both believe in brutal simplicity of thought. What is that? That is creating beautifully simple solutions for our very complex world. Both are also willing and able to step up, roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, and get the job done. Mike Abel and Jason Harrison, co-founders of M&C Saatchi Abel, one of the fastest growing, award-winning and most successful integrated creative agencies right here in South Africa. We are very proud to host you both on the Herald Book Club series to chat, to share your thoughts with the readers, with the viewers. And I also want to, at this stage, quickly thank the Herald team. They are behind the scenes and they've been ensuring that we all go live today. So, guys, wonderful to have you. I won't say back in your hometown because you're in Cape Town, but wonderful to have you on screen with us.
It's lovely to be here. Even though both of us live here, our hearts are firmly in Kwabega, and always a joy to be able to contribute to the city in big ways or small.
Wonderful. You said that very well. Jason?
I said thank you. Thanks for having us, and thanks to the Herald.
Okay, in Kwabega.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Herald, I hope you saw that Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong gave the Herald a big shout out the other night in his television interview, where he said his education growing up in Nelson Mandela Bay came from the Herald. So
yes.
There you go.
And he used to run every night down from his home, which was far, to the Evening Post to get his Evening Post for his family. Oh, see, people that come from Nelson Mandela Bay are very special people. So on that note, guys, tell us, I'm asking you both, because you've both had the experience of living abroad. Jason in London, Mike in Australia, Sydney, Australia, and then returning to South Africa. What's that like?
I think that, they say there's only one true happiness, and that is to live your own life in your own way. And so I think that when you make those decisions yourself, you are liberated to make the most of a situation. So we chose to go to Australia and we chose to return to South Africa. And I guess for me, I've always been an activist of sorts, and I've always tried to create a fairer and more just world and to fight against inequality. But in coming back to South Africa, Michelle, for me, I think the big change was, instead of doing it kind of in a more of a part-time, conscious-led way, to doing it in a much more active way, in contributing meaningfully to South Africa. Because whilst one can have a magnificent life overseas, and many people do, I guess, given the nature of South Africa and trying to redress the past and the challenges we have an ability to have a great purpose here, not just to live a comfortable and a predictable life. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's not a negative comment I'm making. But here, because of the rough and tumble, and because there's so much that needs to be fixed, to contribute meaningfully and purposefully in living, I think, a very rich and engaged life. And that's been the big change for me. And obviously being able to build a remarkable company together with my very close friends.
Yeah. Jason, you were in London for 6 years and you came back.
Very interesting. I mean, we'll get into it a bit later, but I mean, we're sitting here with actually a 20-year relationship Mike and I have, and I guess that's the minimum that sits within our partnership. And what was great for me, because obviously Mike and I worked together at the old shop, I still remember when I eventually said to him, hey, Mike, I want to go on this adventure to London. And he was very supportive of that, and in fact helped me to get a job in London. And I still remember to this day, I said to him, don't worry, it's only going to be 2 years. And I set my out of office for 2 years. You know that thing, Jason's out of office in 2 years. I still remember it. I set it there over here, and I said, yeah, I'm going to be out of office for 2 years. Well, 2 years turned into 6 years. Started off with my girlfriend at the time, Lindsay, who's now become my wife. We had our first child in London. And the truth of it is what we kind of called it our Peter Pan life. It was traveling, it was exciting, and I would absolutely encourage it to anyone come in their formative stages of their career and in their life to go and explore the world. I think it's an unbelievable privilege that we have an opportunity to now, we're all global citizens, but the intent was always to come back. It wasn't to stay. So we had an amazing time over there. And 6 years later, Matthew, our son, was 3 months old, and we said, right, here's the time. I got a call from this man over here. I'd kind of pushed him out enough, and he's a very persuasive man. And we answered the call, and here we are. So I think both work. I think we have to get out there and explore the world, whatever shape and form it takes. And then you've got to obviously decide what you're wanting to do with it. And our goal was always to come back here and build something that we would be proud of.
I'm happy you both said you traveled, because in this time, that word is a foreign word to us, right? And please God, the skies open soon and families and friends can be reunited. What inspired you to tell your story, Mike? And obviously Jason is very much part of the book, but you authored the book. So what inspired you to share?
I guess my overarching orientation around it was to be useful, to say, you've had a lot of things happen in your life, a lot of successes, many failures, many hard knocks, many lessons. And how do you share those successes and those journeys, and how do you share the resilience and the determination with other people? Because, it's not an easy country to live in. We have a disproportionate amount of problems at any given time. Either we're grappling with water, or we're grappling with corruption, or we're grappling with electricity, or we're grappling with the downturned economy. And so, we need to be resilient, and we need to be focused, and we need to be solutions orientated. And so I think that within the book, in no way was it meant to be, or is it, I guess, a brag book or an autobiography. It's meant to be a collection of stories that people can hopefully look at, much like a chef would have a recipe book, and to provide people with accessible hints and observations and thoughts of how to maybe tackle problems or issues in their own lives.
Jason?
I think to add to that, what I love about the book, because it's like any great story, right? You've got themes of hope, you've got themes of optimism, naivety, tenacity, resilience. It's a story about values, it's about principles, it's leadership. And what I love about the book is that it can be applied at an individual level in yourself. You can look at those things and go, wow, I'm learning something individually. I think what's great about it, you can apply it to your company and other companies. So it kind of transcends into companies. And then it moves into the country, an attitude around these things and how you can solve problems in the positive. And I think for me, it's got so many nice facets and lenses to it. I think to cast it maybe as a business book would be too narrow. I think it's an unbelievable book that inspires you from the individual perspective all the way out to the country. And I think it's a very practical book. I think it's got great tips and tricks and tools in it. I think it's really well told in terms of just bringing to life the character and the nuance of things. And hopefully you get to learn a little bit more about the company, but that isn't the intent. The intent is to learn, I think, a lot more around what we believe and is a great way to do things.
Well, having been a reader of the book, I can also attest to that and say that it's a very easy read. And having said it's a very easy read, I'm not trying to simplify it because there are a lot of lessons to be learned. But as a PE girl, it's wonderful. It was wonderful to be able to see photographs of the city and to be able to relate to people that were being spoken about and stories that were being shared. Which brings me to another question. And this is, having both attended school in the city and lived a good part of your lives here, are there any thoughts on how your formative years have played a part in your later years? Your formative years in Nelson Mandela Bay, how have they impacted, if at all, on your later years? Mike?
I've always loved the values of Nelson Mandela Bay and the people. I think that it's a very egalitarian society. I don't think that it's, focused on image or materialism at all. I think that it's a very cohesive city in terms of everybody kind of mucking in and getting along. Obviously growing up during apartheid in PE at the time, I was very conscious, thanks to my parents and my grandparents, of the injustices of the system at the time. So although I had a very wonderful childhood, I was always critically aware of the reality of what was the parallel life that was going on in Nelson Mandela Bay. And, my grandfather used to work every single Thursday for free at the Livingston Hospital as their maxillofacial surgeon for 40 years. My mother on a Thursday night would travel around in the Livingston Hospital ambulance as a paramedic, even though she was running a real estate company. And so I think those things also helped to shape my life in terms of looking not just at, I guess, being at a really good school in Grey and having wonderful friends, most of whom I'm still friends with today, but also being involved in that which I could fix and play a difference in fixing. So, my first business that I started in the 80s was out of Motherwell and Zwede, KwaZulu and New Brighton, which was advertising on taxis with Herald Black Taxi Association. So all of those things mixed up together, I guess, helped shape and form who I am today.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jason.
It's very interesting. I still remember my mom, the one anecdote I have is at attending a school like Grey, which was an absolute privilege, and I loved every moment of it. I'd get my report card every whatever quarter, and I think back then it was 500 Rand or something. My mom used to say, "Do I pay 500 Rand to get that accent?" And it was that came out of us, and to this day, my wife Lindsay, I'll be talking, she's like, "Yeah, what is it with your friend? You get this like PE thing that happens." That's who we are. And my mates live in a kilometer around me, and we still are very, very good friends to this day. So, and I've still got very, very good friends in PE and around the world. So it's given a tremendous base to my life in terms of the shared friendships. And what was really interesting for me is one of the very good friends that's in our circle, we're trying to plan our 25th year Old Grey reunion, but it keeps getting pushed out thanks to COVID. But one of very good friends of ours that's on the group and a very good friend of mine is Dr. Darren Green.
Oh, yeah.
The story about Darren is that, in 1991, when the so-called Model C schools came to fruition, Darren was one of the first, obviously, people of color that came into the school. And, him and I went through school together because his surname was Green, mine was Harrison, and literally we sat in front to back in exams every year. And I remember him telling me a story which was interesting because the rector back then was a chap by the name of Dieter Parkendorf. And to his credit, he said this. He said to Darren when 1991 happened, he said, you'll hear stories of black boys, you'll hear stories of white boys, you'll hear stories of Jewish boys, you'll hear stories of Muslim boys. But I want you to be only one kind of boy. I want you to be a Grey boy. And I think that was a huge statement. And it stuck with me, that story. It stuck with Darren. And it kind of came full circle, funny enough, at this Lions tour that I was watching, because Darren now looks after the full medical staff of the British and Irish Lions. And I saw him on TV, literally sitting there waiting for people to get injured. And Sia Khaleesi had come up, and there was this like kind of crossing moment. And I thought, how amazing is it that this thing has come full circle, whatever it was, 18 years later, amazing. Between Darren coming into the school and Sia Khaleesi, this unbelievable World Cup winning captain leading this tour. I just felt like it's unbelievable what can be achieved in just 20 years is the truth of it. And I think that's something we must all hold on to. We think sometimes all is lost. You think, the wasted years. Well, the truth is anything can be turned around and anything just takes time. And with the right vision and leadership, we get there. That's how it works. You have a plan, you execute the plan, and you move on. And I think that's, for me, the encouragement, and I still love that story with Darren and Sia Khaleesi, I guess. my all-time hero, by the way.
Mine too.
I mean, I love that story. It's very, very meaningful. Apropos the accent that Jason spoke about, often when I'm in business and travel, people ask, where am I from? And I've always thought that's probably because I've shared my PE accent. And I was sitting about 2 years ago at a very Swiss restaurant in Mayfair in London called Scott's. And I was having dinner with our global CEO, Murray McLennan. And we were talking about accents. And I said, no, it's funny because people often don't realize that I'm from South Africa and whatever. And he said to me, or let alone from Port Elizabeth originally. And he said to me, well, do you know how you sound to me? And I thought it was going to come across quite nicely. And he said to me, it sounds like, hello, Murray, how are you doing? It was like looking into a bit of a mirror.
Oh, I love that. I love your stories, and I love that story of Mr. Parkendorf. Cassia is my hero too, and was at school in the same grade as my daughter was at collegiate, and they're big friends. And I have to say that's how I got his number. But anyway, it's a network. I don't care what the network is, right? He is a darling of note. So here's a question from Catherine Richards, who has read your book, Mike. She says, Mike, you touched on immigration in the book by sharing your experience moving to Australia and returning to SA. Can you share about that experience and why you think SA is one of the best? Okay, we've shared the experience, but why you think South Africa is one of the best places in the world to do business with such a high unemployment rate in this country? What do you think government should be doing to help small businesses and general business thrive? You can both answer for us.
That's a great question. It's interesting when I was coming back to South Africa, a South African friend of mine in Australia said to me, and I think the Aussie dollar to the rand now is, I think it's about 11 to 1. But at the time it was R6.50 to 1. And he said to me, it's easier to make R6.50 than it is to make $1. That wasn't any part of it. But what is inherent in that statement, I guess, is the ability to mark and plan, to hustle, to network, and to make things happen within South Africa that I think is very different to within maybe more developed markets. We have an entrepreneurial spirit. We're a frontier economy. Now, I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer whether or not the government's orientation over the last decade certainly has been around job creation. Because when you look at our pre-COVID unemployment rates, they've been going up. They haven't been coming down. And the reason for that, unfortunately, in government is because of, cadre deployment and because of patronage and because of other things. What you end up doing, Michelle, is you end up getting people in office because of political connection, not necessarily ability. So when you look at, for example, the South African economy, we have a $500 billion economy, give or take. Our mining sector is about 18% of that, would equate to roughly about $100 billion. Now, that is obviously one of the great opportunities for employment in South Africa. Within the last 5 years, our mining policies have cost us $50 billion, having gone to other countries, whereas they could have come to us purely through red tape, purely through own goals. Now, you've got to believe what that 50 billion would create in terms of jobs is exponential. So where we have to get to today is a public-private partnership where if you've got a Gwedi Mantashe running mining or something, mineral affairs or whatever it might be, and Ibrahim Patel in trade and industry, you have to have sound partnerships with private business, big business, and big business needs to help small business. So unless we have a deliberate strategy as South Africa of changing the tactic and putting party over state, we will never win. That is a formula guaranteed to fail time and time again. And unless we choose the right partners, we have, are our partnerships ones that are parasitic or ones that are unlock meaningful growth in South Africa. And I think that when you look at the partnerships that we forge with many countries, those countries want to basically come in here and at a low price and at a low cost of entry extract. And I think that what we need to do is to form partnerships with countries, big developed countries that want us to win, that are mutually beneficial relationships, but with one eye on the prize being job creation. You know, as I've said many times in the last number of weeks, while Zuma might have been the flame, poverty was the firewood. And until we solve unemployment in this country, and until we see government apply policies and practices that unlock economic growth, we can't solve unemployment. So that for me is the big challenge and opportunity we have in South Africa right now, is to partner government, to put pressure on government, and to unlock economic growth.
Absolutely. It's got to start there, because that sometimes is the fuel that starts the fire. Correct. Jason, I'm going to hand over to you for a little conversational time with your partner.
We have it every day.
Okay, but try and sound excited, Jason.
Of course. No, I think it's worth exploring maybe like a couple of themes in the book. And actually, I'll jump off one thing, which is this idea of partnership. And we've obviously talked about it a lot. You mentioned it, Mike. Like, tell us in the book, this thing of partnership. Why is it so powerful? Why is it something that works? What are the benefits of it?
I think the first thing, Jace, is I think that when I'm talking and when I'm sharing stuff, all I'm saying is what I know already. That to me is of little benefit because I know it. So I think that when you are working with people from diverse backgrounds, different ways of thinking, if you look at our partnership, you know, I'm the mad, crazy one that pushes stuff out, and you the more responsible and logical one that pulls it back in. And I think that as a foil for one another, just in terms of our partnership, that's invaluable, because you've got the stretch and then you've got the correction happening often. And I think that really our business is a team sport. It's not, you know, kind of the men's tennis final. It's basically a rugby match or a soccer match, whichever analogy you want to use. And so I think that when a partnership really hums is when you've all got you know what the sport is, you know what the game is, you've got a game plan, and you've all got your positions. And you work accurately within those positions and with flair and creativity to bring the best game forward. And I think that that's the power of our partnership. I think the other power of our partnership is the way we have adopted a totally flat structure, where it's an environment where we all have equal opportunity to contribute, to shape, to shift, and to form our company the way we want.
You know, I think it's a great point. And the thing I'll jump off on that is, I guess, a story related to me and Mike around that partnership. I mean, I said you started, it's 20 years old. You know, and when you say the book is called Willing and Able, obviously we understand he's able. I might be willing. I am willing. But I think that the willing isn't just about stepping up to the plate. I think it's about having the will to change things, you know, and I think that comes through for me in a very strong theme that's certainly within Mike's life, but I think in the book, and that's this idea of positivity, the will to be positive. I mean, there are so many things in the world right now that are going on. It's something I learn every day, I guess, from you, and something that's innate to him. I mean, I must say I had a staff meeting 5-6 years ago, and I said, you know, the thing about Mike Abel, I told all the staff, I said, he has a reality distortion field. And everyone was like, what? What do you mean? I said, no, because the reality that faces him is not the reality that he plays back, and it's not the thing that becomes the norm, and it's an ability to, I guess, bend reality. Talk to us about, I think, positivity. It's such an important thing.
So the starting point is that negativity yields nothing positive. There is nothing positive that comes out of being negative. So why would you practice something that isn't going to give you a good result? It's just a vortex. It's a downward spiral. And so you have to train yourself, and I've trained myself consciously not to succumb to negativity because there isn't a good outcome. So when I see a problem, I never run away from it, I run towards it. Because if you run away from a problem can run as fast or faster than you can. So the faster you run, it's going to catch up to you and it's going to tackle you. So you might as well turn around and face it and try and kill it and try and solve it. So that's my orientation. It's very simplistic, but I get purpose out of problem solving. I get purpose out of looking at a problem and saying, okay, I'm coming for you, and identifying it. And I think that the big thing around problem solving, and you know that I obsess about this, is verification of the problem. Because a lot of the time people try and solve a problem, but they haven't identified, is that the actual problem? They just want to jump to the answer. So I think that a problem verification is actually more important than the solution. Because if you identify the problem properly, you can solve it properly, as opposed to just jumping to the solution. And I think positivity is contagious. I think that when you are positive and when you are optimistic and when you are focused on stuff, people rally around it and the universe conspires to help you. You know, when you're negative, there is no energy or momentum in it. You know, and you're just left alone in the corner to lead a sorry life.
One last thought I had was, I mean, you know, I think partnership is a big theme in the book, and I think it's really interesting to explore. I think positivity is a big theme in the book, and it's absolutely worth exploring. The other one is principles. And, you know, you've got that picture behind you, I guess, that frame on your wall that I guess you've had on your wall for 25 years.
Yeah.
This idea of principles, you
28.
know. Yeah, 28 years. You know, this idea of principles is obviously, principles can cost you. What's your view on that? What lessons are in the book?
So I am a bit of a happy fool, I guess, when it comes to principles, because I believe they are immovable. You know, people talk about moral ambiguity. I don't believe that. I think that where the world gets itself into trouble is this notion of moral ambiguity. I think it's very clear if something is good and if something adds to people's freedoms, personal freedoms as regards anything, whether it's gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, whatever those things are. And I think that those are binary things, to be honest with you. I think it's right or wrong, because people often say, in this post-truth world, whose truth? Your truth, their truth, this truth? No, I don't go for that kind of woke nonsense. I think the truth is the truth. And I think that if something impacts negatively, I have, as you know, a intolerance for intolerance. So if I see any form of intolerance, I won't stand for it. I guess that's my form of intolerance, is my intolerance of intolerance. At the same time, I think it's very clear if something is honest and decent and good, or if something is corrupt or dodgy or negative. And I think that if you give yourself space to explore those things, you run into a lot of trouble. I think if your simplistic setting is not to give yourself permission to do damage, to do harm, to benefit disproportionately or wrongly, and of course, I've got faults. Not for a second do I want to come across like, you know, I don't swear, or, you know, I won't gossip about something. Of course, I'm human and normal, exactly. But if I can see something is wrong, what I would like to believe is that I won't tolerate it. You know, I come from a family history where my father's mother, my grandmother, was, her whole family was exterminated in the Holocaust in Poland. That didn't come to South Africa. So I've seen exactly where intolerance can go, you know. And so when you're sitting around a table and people make a negative comment about somebody and you let it ride or slide, or you laugh along with them, no, sorry. That's your moment to actually step forward and say, I won't do it. And you and I know that we've had many opportunities in building our company in terms of the vague areas of doing business. You know, I have had people say to me that when I've said no to certain deals, telling me that I'm stupid and naive, verbatim, and I don't understand how business is done in the new South Africa. And my response has always been, thank you, so be it. Because I don't think that you give way to doing stuff in a dodgy way. So yeah, I think, and I don't think that's how my setting. I know you are identical in that way. And I know that the other partners in the company are identical. And I think that is one of the things that unites us as a partnership is our unbending commonality in not putting up with any of that shit.
Brilliant. Michelle, have I got time for one more? Have you got some questions there?
No, I've got a question here, but you ask yours. Okay,
brilliant. One last thing. I guess it's the 4th P. You know me, I have to have things that rhyme. Practiced it about 5 times. Mike, tell us about the things that you believe should be done in P in terms of active citizenship, because I guess there's a thing around what do we do? We're losing hope. How do we do this thing? What's the inspiration? What's the thoughts that's around that?
Cool. So I think the interesting thing is that many years ago, probably about 10 years ago, I was invited by, amongst others actually at the time, Michelle, to come down and talk to the Pyramid Club, as it was called then. It's now called the Forum, around me and my career and what I've done. And I said, no, well, I'm not going to do that because it'll bore the hell out of everybody else. But if I'm allowed to come down and talk about Port Elizabeth, as it was called back then, I'm happy to do that. And they said, no, we'll just come and chat. And what we chatted about is I stood in front of the audience and I said to them, so what is the idea for Nelson Mandela Bay? And they all looked at me with blank faces, taking nothing away from the people there. And I said, it's a very simple question I'm asking. What is the idea for Nelson Mandela Bay? And nobody put up their hand. And I said, well, I'll help you with that. 90 years ago, somebody said, let's make cars here. And so you did. And tires and batteries and shock absorbers and windscreen wipers and everything else. And an entire city sprung out of that, an entire industry. 90 years later, what is the idea for the city? Because the city has to have an idea in order to succeed. Now, for me, you know, if you talk to Phil Knight of Nike, as you and I know this example well, and you say, who is the enemy of Nike? He won't say Adidas or Puma. He'll say apathy. Unless I can get more people off the couch and moving, I can't sell more shoes. And who is the enemy of Nelson Mandela Bay? A lack of self-belief. It's an incredible city with incredible people. Just remarkable people come from the city. The city's got unbelievable assets, unbelievable labor force. You know, I arrived there a few weeks ago just for a day to take my middle son to see the flight school there, and which they've got as well. And the city is sitting on 10% water at the moment. Nowhere landing there or in the airport was there something like, there's a water crisis here, reduce water consumption. Whereas we know we developed for Cape Town that whole defeat day zero thing specifically to drive down water consumption. The other thing that you don't realize, you arrive in Johannesburg and you immediately aware at the airport that you are close to where there is game, as in game reserves. Now, Nelson Mandela Bay is 40 minutes away from the best malaria-free game reserves in the world. So there's a global market that Nelson Mandela Bay could attract to come to the city, to spend money there, and then to go to those magnificent game farms just outside there, which is unique, okay? And nowhere within Nelson Mandela Bay do you have it on your consciousness like you have with Joburg and Kruger, that you're actually a gateway to the most unbelievable ecotourism, the Big Seven, malaria-free Big Seven, where you've got 20 minutes outside Nelson Mandela Bay, you've got Kruger, that could absolutely have ships from Celebrity and Norwegian and Royal Caribbean coming there with tens of thousands of people. It's not marketed that way. So there's a huge opportunity. People talk about PE being the windy city. That's great, it's the windy city. So it's the home to wind sport. It's the home to clean air. It's the home to green energy. Lean into your problems and lean into your criticisms and unlock them. So I think there's so much going for Nelson Mandela Bay that if Nelson Mandela Bay believed in itself and grabbed those opportunities, then my belief is that Gqeberha could be one of the great cities of South Africa, because it should be. There's no reason why it isn't. And also if we get to build the Nelson Mandela Tower of Light, because it's got the name of the most famous statesman in the world. And how to unlock that opportunity for the city is something that they should actively explore.
Brilliant.
Thank you. He's so passionate about the city. I love it.
I love it.
Okay. And I love it. I love it. So here's a question from a viewer, Tanya Hill, who says, to make South Africa great again, you need to employ people with equal qualifications. And when will BEE stop?
Okay, so to ask a question like that is tricky for me insofar as the answer, because I have to answer it as I would anything entirely honestly. So when you look at, and I have to use the word privilege, because it's a very real thing. When you have a look at the fact that we entered the new democracy in 1994, you can't automatically assume immediately that everybody has had equal opportunity at that point and now it's unlocked for everybody. Not at all. There's a whole lot of bias, conscious bias and subconscious bias. There's a whole lot of lessons. There's a whole lot of generational wealth that has been accumulated and whatever. So you can't just look at this and say, okay, well, everybody get over apartheid. We're now all equal, whatever. What you have to do is you have to put in place meaningful, tangible, and workable solutions to create a sharing economy and an inclusive culture. You have to. And I don't think that government has embraced that sufficiently when you look at the level of unemployment. And I don't think that society holistically has embraced that collectively. So when I look at our company, when people complain about BEE, actually the MNC Saatchi Abel Group believes in BEE. We are a transformed company. Over 60% of our staff are Black. We have diversity of thought as an enduring belief system. We believe that when people come from different backgrounds and different cultures, they can do remarkable things together. So I think that when you say, should people, so here's the thing. When you want a job done, you need people who are qualified and capable to get that job done. There's no question. But what you also need to do is to have a look at who's available for that job, to give disproportionate advantage to people who have been shut out of the economy historically. No question about that. And what you need to be able to do is to also be able to bring people along the journey with you and be able to have skills transfer and upliftment for people that have been shut off from the economy historically. So I think that what you do need is, whether it's Black economic empowerment or whether it's another instrument, you need a mechanism to redress the past. And you can't say because the past ended. You know, when I look at what my parents were allowed to do as highly qualified people that were given access to university and education, when I look at what my grandparents were allowed to do and how that all imbued me, and then you suddenly say, well, here's a first-time generation that have been allowed equal opportunity in terms of school and university and wealth accumulation. You can't just eradicate our past. You have to say, how do you do both? It's not one or the other. It's a parallel process of redressing the past, of creating an inclusive culture, and at the same time of creating opportunity for yourself. It's not one or the other. I don't know if you've got a different...
No, I like the perspective. But for me, I think that I agree that it's both. And I think it does come down to leadership. I think that ultimately there is a lack of leadership in our country. And leadership, we know, strong leaders have strong visions translate into clear plans, and plans get executed. And that's what, when people talk about the lost generation, is we haven't had the leadership. We've got all the natural resources in the country. We've got all the funds we need. We've actually got the talent base. We just haven't had leadership and clear direction, and then executing on plans. We have to execute stuff. We have to get stuff done. And I think that, to my story of what can change in 20 years, yes, we might have lost 20. Fair enough, whatever that may look like. But what did the next 20 look like? And I think we need a clear view of what that is. The country will get behind that very quickly, and through public and private partnership, we will unlock it. I mean, here in Cape Town, the convention center is vaccinating. I mean, it's got 5,000 bays to vaccinate people, whatever that may be. And it's a partnership with Discovery. It's working, it's brilliant. It's 15 minutes, you're in and out and you're done. That's a perfect example for me of just expertise with government being unlocked. I mean, done. There it is. It's not hard. It's happening. So we are more of those: clean energy, water, etc., etc. It is quite easy, actually. It just needs the will and the vision to do it.
And I think, just to that point, I think one of the other great opportunities for South Africa right now is the kibbutz system, is subsistence farming, is skills development and training within. One thing that South Africa's got plenty of is land. I mean, and I talk about the kibbutz system. You look at what the state of Israel has done with zero natural assets, but with brain power, they've unlocked hydroponics in terms of farming. They've converted the air into water, and they've turned the desert into an oasis. Now, KwaZulu-Natal is 5 times the size of the state of Israel, just KZN. So and it's highly arable land. So when you look at the farming opportunity for export, for subsistence farming, for getting communities together. We retire teachers at the age of 60 or 65, where they could work for another 10 or 15 years. We have always said, why don't you build old age homes next to orphanages, so that people that are often disenfranchised and forgotten from society, whether they're old or young, can find mutual purpose and love being together and doing stuff together. And I think that if you had to embrace whatever we decide to call it, doesn't need to be called a kibbutz, but the underlying idea of farming, of subsistence, of skills development, of transfer, what we could unlock for South Africa is unbelievable. We need fresh solutions that combine skilled labor and unskilled labor in doing remarkable things. Because if you think of unskilled labor, very quickly they can be skilled. I mean, if you look at the automotive industry of Nelson Mandela Bay, you are exporting cars to the world from people that 10 years ago might have known nothing about manufacturing a car. And now they're working on the most sophisticated production lines in the world. That's how quickly you can turn it around.
Jason, I have a question here. Thank you. I have a question from Catherine Richards. She says, Jason, what project are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a very interesting and easy one, I guess, for us. And it is in the book, funny enough, is, the great thing about working in an advertising agency or in the creative field, and the thing that I love the most, is taking your creative ability and applying it to problems. It's the best thing, actually. It's a big privilege to be in this job, because you're applying this creativity into all spaces and shapes and different clients. But the one thing that stands out for me, which is for me the most remarkable and most that I'm proud of, is the initiative we've led called the Street Store. And it's an amazing little story. And I think it's a great story of how big things come from small things. And the story is as follows: is literally we looked out the window, and there's a lot of homeless people that sit outside of our agency. And the creative team that were looking out the window said, well, how can we solve this problem? How can we bring creativity to bear? And from that, the conversation between Mike, myself, Gordon Ray, who is our executive creative director, birthed this thing called the Street Store. And the Street Store had a very simple principle: how do you restore humanity? That's actually the fundamental, the dignity of people. And we've all been there. It's like, oh, I'll just drop off a bag, or I'll just give this guy a pair of shoes. Well, he's a size 9, and I've just given him a size 6. How degrading can I be? Oh, well, no, you must just take these shoes, or just take this grubby T-shirt. And we said, well, let's not do that. How do we restore dignity? And literally through 5 posters, we set up the Street Store, and it literally happened right here outside the agency on the road. We put up 5 posters, and you could go down as a person and hang up a top or a jacket, or put down a pair of shoes. And then we invited homeless people to line up and actually shop. Now, you take the homeless person who's been given nothing in their life, only turmoil and hatred, I guess, in terms of people ignoring them, to have the ability to now change that person's life, to shop for something they want, not what they're given, for me was unbelievable. And I think the best testament to that is we put it as an open source platform. And we found out, we're about to run 1,000th one, by the way. We found out, my best story was that we found out 2 years in, you kind of do these things in South Africa, and then they start to happen in Mexico and the States, and there's one popping up in Australia. And we got an email from a lady that was in Iraq. And basically she said, which is a war zone back then, she said, you'll never believe it, but I've run a street store, and I'm clothing a lot of the children that sit in here that don't have parents or don't have clothes anymore. And then it hits you, then you realize you've applied activity, and you've actually done something to change someone's life who's in Iraq. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. So, and that's all of us, I think people think, oh, that's agency people. South Africans are the most creative bunch of people I've ever met. When I lived and worked in London, there's a way of doing things. South Africans don't have a way. They hustle, man. They get on with it. They apply the thing that's up here, and they apply this fierce to situations. And our creativity, it's unbelievable. I mean, look what happens after these riots. Look what happens how we rebuild things. So I believe it's the most powerful force. We always talk about it as the other vaccine, creativity. That's the other vaccine right now that we all have within us. Just have to use the bloody thing.
And I think one thing that's come out of this last year and almost a year and a half of lockdown is the word collaboration. And it's what you're talking about, guys. It's about partnerships. Private sector with public sector, the street store with people who are, it's a partnership, coming in, giving their shoes, giving their clothing, and also restoring human dignity. I love that. And that's what the street store is doing. We're coming to the end, but today, Mike, you were quoted in the Times in the United Kingdom, and you said, and it's not verbatim, but you said that when our country gets to the edge, there are remarkable everyday people who pull us back from the brink, and somehow we recover. And I think it's alluding to what you just said, Jason. South Africans are incredibly resilient. Do you want to both maybe have a last word on that? About South Africans can pull us back from the brink, and with the looting that we saw a few weeks ago, South Africans pulled us back.
Yeah, I think that we have a lot of people that have very good values in our country. We are by and large a God-fearing country. We are people who go to church, who go to synagogue, who go to mosque, who go to temples. We are people who have a very high level, generally by and large, of Ubuntu, and we want the country to work. You can't look at South Africa and have over R1 trillion stolen out of our economy in the last 10 years by the Zuma Gupta kleptocracy, which had no concern whatsoever for poor South Africans, and not expect consequence from that. You can't have a 70% youth unemployment rate and not expect consequence. And so I think it is a moment of, the ANC keep on promising this moment of introspection, and I hope that it does come. But for us, it's a moment of looking at the country and saying, as the citizenry, we've taken on a hell of a lot. We trying to solve the problems of government, whereas government is paid by our taxes to do that job. And we're happy to do it in partnership with government, but they have to pull, you can't play tennis by yourself. If the ball doesn't come back from the other end of the net, eventually you run out of balls. And the South African citizen has been hitting that ball over to the other side of the net, hoping for it to come back. This is now the moment, Michelle, that we need the ball to come back. Because what happened in Durban and what happened KZN and what happened in Gauteng is there was an opportunity for people who had very little, and then a few disgusting opportunists jumped on board as well, the same way as they do in London or in America or in any other looting that takes place around the world. It's not unique to us what we saw happen. It's happened all around the world, where people that mostly have nothing, but a lot of people that have lots, suddenly see the window of the shop broken and something goes wrong in their brain. And they think, this is my opportunity to steal. No, it's not. But what we did see were remarkable, unexpected heroes, like the taxi drivers, the most lawless people on our roads, often in terms of red robots and whatever, but saying, I understand that unless I protect these people, unless I protect this mall, I'm not going to have a job. The people that I take to work and back every day are not going to have jobs. What I can see over here is a disintegration of a community and a society. And so they stood up and they said, not on our watch. And there were a lot of us. I mean, our company got involved with something with Professor Nick Benadel. It takes 600 Rand to feed a family of 4 people for a month. I mean, how sad is that as a number, for starters? And just through a little bit of effort through Nick driving this program with us, we've managed to feed over 1,000 people and families, not people, families. And together with lots and lots of individuals and organizations in South Africa, we were nothing special in it, I can assure you. A lot of us got behind doing this. We managed to feed hundreds of thousands of people. But what government is doing, it's relying on how do you win an election? You arrive the day before with a T-shirt and a food basket, and you pretend to be interested. That's no longer going to cut it anymore in South Africa. South Africa needs job creation, and we can each play a role in it. As Jason said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I think that is the question right now. You know, the most unpopular article I ever wrote was that we can all do, us that are affluent, with a little bit, we can all have more by having a little bit less, by contributing actively to building society, through sharing, through unlocking opportunity. And I think that is my big message today, is that we should focus on how do we tackle unemployment and how do we hold government accountable to deliver. And if we do those two things concurrently, we will have a different country. But we need active citizenry. We can no longer turn the other way and say, oh, because we've got President Ramaphosa, everything's going to come right. Unless we each in our own way change this country, it's not going to change.
Thank you. A last sentence from you, Jason?
Yeah, that's exactly my thought. I think it's less hand out, more hand up. I think that's absolutely that's how we solve the country.
And there is a question from a reader, Xavier, but Xavier, it's about collaboration, and you have, I hope for his sake, answered it between public and private sector. But I would ask that Xavier maybe send his contact details to the Herald, and I can then forward it to you guys. And if you could reply in full offline to him, because he wants to know more about collaboration. I just want to say a very big thank you to both of you. It's so wonderful that you give up your time. It's so wonderful that you're both still so proud of not only being from Port Elizabeth or whatever you want to call it, but also being proudly South African. And Mike, I want to end off with a quote. You said it's better to have a small part of something extraordinary than to have a large part of something ordinary. So thank you for that. We need to become a small part of this extraordinary country that is ours, and that is South Africa. I want to thank you both. I want to thank your team at MNC Saatchi Abel, who helped to set this up, Nadia, Maciek. But I also want to thank the Herald team, Berna, Catherine, Sipokazi, Amara, Taryn. As you said, Mike, this is always about a team effort. Nothing happens just because it's you alone. So it's about a team effort. And hopefully our team on Saturday will take that up again and at your stadium and clap those other people. And so thank you both so much for being with us. And thank you to the Herald Book Club series partnered with Bargain Books. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.